Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a listener inquiry that started out incredibly specific
Very specific.
and so relatable. The question was just, why can't I stop scrolling YouTube Shorts and TikTok Reels?
We've all been there.
Absolutely.
Huh.
But then that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
it just kept going. It led us through layers of neurobiology, behavioral science, and then somehow straight into the most profound philosophical questions about free will and existence.
It really did.
This is, hands down, the most metaphysical deep dive we have ever structured.
It's a remarkable journey, truly. We started with this question, behavioral addiction, but the sources the listener sent over, they forced us to reconcile modern clinical data with concepts like determinism and anatta.
The Buddhist concept of non-self.
Exactly. So our mission today is to follow that exact intense thought progression. We're going to mechanically break down the human system for you. So first, we'll establish a solid foundation, define what addiction actually is. Then we'll get into the precise engineering used to hijack your brain with the infinite scroll.
And the third part, which is the most critical.
The most critical. If the core insight holds true, that there is no independent doer, that it's all just a flow of cause and effect, then how can we possibly come up with a pragmatic metric for figuring out what is worth doing?
That last question is the ultimate prize here. And what's so compelling is how fresh the supporting evidence is. We're not just quoting ancient philosophy.
No, not at all.
We're synthesizing medical definitions from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, the ASAM, with neurological studies that are as current as 2025 and 2026.
Right.
This isn't just abstract theory.
It's a mechanical schematic. A schematic of the modern mind facing a very modern problem.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with that foundation, the basic understanding of addiction itself.
We absolutely must. And we have to be really clear here, because the common understanding of addiction is it's just polluted by moral judgment.
Right, it's seen as a weakness.
A weakness, a moral failing, a lack of willpower, just a bad habit. We need to throw that idea out immediately.
So what's the clinical reality?
According to the ASAM, the American Society of Medicine Addiction is defined as a chronic, complex medical disease.
A disease.
A medical disease. It's a physiological condition, and it involves dysfunction in very specific brain circuits, the reward, motivation, and memory circuits. It's pathology, not personality.
Okay, so if it's a chronic medical disease, that means it's a hardware issue. It's something that needs ongoing management, not just a switch you can decide to flip off.
That's it, exactly.
The sources used a really vivid analogy for this. They called it a hijacking. What does that hijacking actually look like in practice?
What's being hijacked are the most fundamental systems in the machine, the brain's own survival systems.
Wow.
The disease is so complex that the brain starts to prioritize the addictive input, whether that's a chemical or, in this case, a behavioral pattern, like scrolling over essential, genuine survival needs.
Like food or sleep.
Think about that for a second. Addiction causes the brain to literally re-rank its internal priorities. It places that immediate addictive trigger above things like eating healthy food, getting enough sleep, maintaining your physical health, or, nurturing your relationships.
The actual pillars of long-term survival.
The foundational pillars. And the urgency of the addiction just overrides everything else.
And that urgency is driven by our internal wiring. The key neurochemical here, the one that gets corrupted, is dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
How does it orchestrate the beginning of this hijacking?
Dopamine is so often misunderstood. Everyone calls it the pleasure chemical.
Right.
But it's far more accurate to call it the anticipation and motivation chemical.
Oh, okay.
Its main job is to tell the machine, hey, that thing you just experienced, that's important for survival, go get more of it. It's what generates the seeking behavior.
And in nature, that system works fine.
Perfectly. You find a high-calorie meal or you make a good social connection and you get this gentle, sustained rise in dopamine. The problem starts when the system finds a substance or a highly optimized behavior that triggers a massive unnatural flood.
A surge.
A huge, overwhelming surge that just dwarfs any natural reward.
And the brain is, at its core, a self-regulating system. So it has to respond to that unnatural surge. It can't just let the floodgates stay open.
Absolutely not. The brain's number one goal is homeostasis, maintaining internal balance.
Right.
So when it gets flooded with dopamine over and over, the system sees this extreme imbalance as a threat. and it launches a defense mechanism. We call it adaptation or tolerance.
What does that look like on a cellular level?
To protect itself from being constantly overstimulated, the brain literally pulls back or reduces the number of dopamine receptors on the surface of its neurons. You can imagine it like it's turning down the volume or just withdrawing the welcome mat.
And the result of that is, well, it's kind of counterintuitive for the person experiencing it. Now you need more of that input just to feel the same thing.
Precisely. That is tolerance in action. The machine needs higher and higher doses or longer and longer scrolling times just to get the same minimal level of internal reward.
And this is where the cycle gets really debilitating. The shift from seeking pleasure to just seeking normal.
That is the critical shift. Tell us more about that. Why does the activity stop being about feeling good?
Well, the brain has basically outsourced its natural dopamine production. The external thing is providing these huge hits, so the internal factory it shuts down.
So you stop making it yourself.
Exactly. The individual eventually stops generating dopamine naturally because the receptors are sparse, and the whole system is desensitized. So now you're not doing the thing, the drug, the scrolling, to get that massive euphoric high.
That high is now biologically impossible to reach.
Right. You're just doing it to feel normal. To get back to the baseline that a non-addicted brain just maintains naturally, and maybe even more urgently.
To avoid the pain of withdrawal.
To avoid the intense discomfort, the anxiety, the pain of withdrawal, which is just the brain's internal alarm bell, screaming that its survival circuit has been interrupted.
That mechanical breakdown, it makes so much sense. And to help you, the listener, identify this process in your own life, the sources lay out some universal criteria. They call them the 4 C's of addiction.
They just go through them.
These are the signposts that it doesn't matter what the substance or the behavior is, they confirm this disease state is present. The first is compulsion.
The intense urge.
The intense urge or craving. It's that intrusive thought that just demands your attention, the feeling that you must check the feed right now. It's not a casual thought. It's a biological imperative.
And the second C goes right back to the physical hijacking we were just talking about.
That's control, loss of. This is when you can't stop or limit or regulate the behavior, even when you genuinely want to.
You might tell yourself, I'm just going to scroll for 10 minutes.
And you look up and 2 hours have vanished. The conscious will, the thinker, has been totally overridden by the speed and the power of that automatic circuit.
The third C is where it hits the real world.
Consequences.
Yeah.
This is when you keep doing the behavior despite clear, obvious evidence that it's causing severe negative repercussions.
So, health issues.
Health issues like sleep deprivation or neck pain, financial strain, or what's most common with digital addiction, a serious deterioration of your real-life relationships and your career performance. The machine prioritizes the immediate dopamine hit over demonstrable long-term harm.
And the final C brings us right back to that motivational drive.
Cravings, the mental preoccupation. Even when you're actively doing something else, working, talking to a friend, a huge chunk of your attention is just captured by planning or anticipating or ruminating about the next chance to do the thing. It's like a continuous low-level mental static.
And it's so important to establish these criteria apply just as much to behaviors as they do to chemical substances.
Absolutely. We distinguish between substance addictions, alcohol, nicotine, opioids, and behavioral addictions, sometimes called process addictions.
Gambling, shopping.
Gambling, shopping, excessive exercise, and social media or short-form video. The neuroscientific consensus, which is backed up by these new studies, is that these behaviors trigger the exact same brain reward systems. They follow the same tolerance mechanism, and they meet the same diagnostic criteria.
The fact that there's no physical substance doesn't make the brain disease any less real.
Not at all.
Okay, so with that medical foundation set, let's shift focus. Let's talk specifically about short-form video reels, shorts, TikTok. If this behavior triggers the same response as a substance, that can't be an accident. This stuff is engineered.
You're hitting the nail on the head. We have to acknowledge this is a deliberate design challenge. The goal of these platforms is to maximize the time you spend on them. And while a behavioral addiction doesn't involve, injecting a chemical, it involves injecting a psychological trigger that is so effective that recent 2025 studies confirm the neural activity looks strikingly similar to the patterns you see in chronic gamblers or substance users. They are using proven, potent psychological levers.
And the most potent of all, the core mechanism, is the one that turns your phone into a handheld slot machine.
We call this variable ratio reinforcement, or, the slot machine effect. This is the single most powerful tool for conditioning behavior period.
So why is it so powerful?
Well, compare it to a fixed reward. If you knew that every single time you swiped, you'd see a mildly interesting video, your brain would adapt very quickly, the dopamine hit would get smaller and smaller. We call that a fixed ratio.
But the variable ratio, it keeps the brain guessing. It introduces uncertainty.
Precisely. The uncertainty is the engine of the craving. Every single swipe is a gamble. Is this next one going to be hilarious? Is it going to be boring? Shocking. Incredibly educational.
You never know.
You never know. And that unpredictability triggers far more dopamine than a guaranteed reward would. Your brain sees the act of swiping like pulling the lever, and it's perpetually driven by the hope that the jackpot video is just one more scroll away. It maintains that seeking behavior without ever letting you feel satisfied.
And this is compounded by just how short the content is. The microdose effect. You don't have to commit to anything.
It's ingenious, really. The 15 to 60-second clip offers instant, zero-barrier gratification. You don't need to commit 5 minutes, let alone an hour.
So it fuels that toxic just one more thought.
Exactly, because the cognitive cost of engaging is basically zero. This leads directly to mindless scrolling or doom scrolling, where the brain just defaults to this easy, continuous stream of input. And what's more, the algorithm is a real-time curator.
It's learning from you with every swipe.
By the time you finish one clip, the system has learned a tiny bit more about what keeps your specific reward circuits firing. It traps you in an ever-refining feedback loop that's designed for endless engagement.
This kind of relentless, fragmented input has led people to coin terms like popcorn brain. It sounds like a joke, but the neurological effect is very real.
It's not an exaggeration at all. Terms like popcorn brain or TikTok brain refer to the profound attention fragmentation that happens.
What do you mean by that?
Imagine leaping from, I don't know, a complex physics concept to a quick dance trend to a shocking news headline, all in the space of 90 seconds. Your brain is forced to rapidly context switch, constantly resetting its focus.
And over time, that has to have a cost.
It degrades your ability to sustain deep, focused attention on long-form, complex tasks. You know, the kind of focus you need for advanced learning or real problem solving.
Yeah.
It's like only ever doing high-rep, low-weight exercises at the gym. The mental muscle you need for the heavy, deep work just atrophies.
This touches on that psychological idea of System 1 versus System 2 thinking. Let's unpack how this digital trap actually weakens our ability to think rationally.
This is a fundamental concept from decision science. System 1 is the fast, instinctive, emotional, automatic part of the brain. It requires almost no effort, and it's optimized for immediate response.
And short videos are made for System 1.
They're tailor-made for it. They're designed to bypass your critical thinking and just get an immediate emotional or dopamine response. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, logical, effortful. It governs long-term planning, complex calculation, and critically, impulse control.
So by constantly feeding that immediate instinctive System 1, we're essentially starving and weakening System 2.
That's exactly it. The digital environment trains your brain to rely on the instantaneous, low-effort System 1 response. So when the urge to scroll comes up, the part of your brain that's capable of rational resistance System 2 has just atrophied from disuse. It's too slow or too weak to override that powerful, immediate impulse.
So the behavioral addiction is really a victory of the primitive fast response System 1 over the modern logical System 2.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And the research from 2025 and 2026, it gives us clear neuroimaging evidence for this. It confirms this isn't just a subjective feeling of being distracted.
This is the hard data that grounds this whole conversation. Recent neuroimaging studies, some really compelling work from institutions like Tianjin Normal University, have mapped the brain activity of heavy short-form users.
What did they find?
Two key findings that happen at the same time. First, heavy users show increased activity in the ventral striatum.
Which is the brain's primary reward center.
Exactly. It's the area that lights up in drug addiction, in gambling. It signifies a hyperactive, constantly demanding reward circuit.
And the second finding?
Second, and just as important, they found decreased functional activity in the prefrontal cortex, PFC.
The PFC being the seat of executive function, the brakes, the impulse control, the rational planner.
That's right. So you have a situation where the part of the brain seeking immediate reward is hyperactive and always on, while the part responsible for applying the brakes, for calculating long-term consequences, for saying no, is functionally depressed and less responsive.
It's a mechanically perfect setup for losing control.
It is a mechanically perfect setup for the loss of control that defines behavioral addiction. This data shows the physical price we are paying for this constant microdosing.
Okay, this is where the listener's original self-inquiry became truly profound. They identified that their main trigger for scrolling wasn't necessarily excitement, but simply having nothing to do, a feeling of unused energy.
Right.
That restless feeling just defaulted straight to the digital trap.
And this is a critical psychological distinction. We tend to think of boredom as this low energy state, but for many people, it's what's called boredom proneness.
Which is actually a high arousal state.
It's a high arousal, restless state. The system is idling at high capacity. It's seeking external engagement. It's hungry for high-quality information. Your body feels this active, driving energy that demands to be expressed.
So if the machine has this innate drive, this restless energy, and there's no high-effort, meaningful goal in front of it, like a big project or physical training or a deep conversation.
It seeks the easiest release. It follows the path of least resistance.
And short-form videos are the perfect relief valve.
The perfect psychological relief valve. They require zero physical exertion, just a thumb swipe. But they provide immediate, overwhelming, continuous cognitive input. They are the perfect mechanism to harmlessly vent that restless mental energy.
The tragic irony being that this powerful innate drive, the same energy that could launch a company or write a novel or run a marathon,
Is intercepted and wasted in the smallest physical motion possible. It's vented through the thumb. The energy gets spent, but it produces zero long-term structural value.
and this mechanical observation, the realization that the energy always takes the path of least resistance. This is what led the listener to that ultimate philosophical realization.
The huge leap.
If everything is just cause and effect, just following mechanical laws, then the I, who thinks they are choosing the action, must be an illusion. There's no independent doer. We're just cotheroparks, passengers watching a biological machine respond to its environment.
This is the massive shift. This realization, which you see in philosophical determinism and Eastern ideas like anatta, non-self, it changes the entire paradigm.
The whole game changes.
Because if there's no little person inside the machine choosing, then the old moralistic question of why did I choose to scroll just dissolves. It's not a valid question anymore.
And a new mechanical question emerges.
A new question. If no one is choosing, how do we determine what is worth doing?
If choice is an illusion, then the definition of worth has to shift from a moral judgment to a mechanical assessment.
Exactly. Worth stops being about good or bad intentions, and it becomes a measure of the direction and quality of the system's energy flow. We have to assess how efficiently and harmoniously the energy is being used and what state the machine is left in afterward.
The sources introduced a river analogy to explain this flow. How does that work?
Okay, so visualize your system, your life, your mind as a river. The water is your energy and attention, and it flows according to the external laws of nature. You know, the shape of the riverbed, the force of gravity, the path of least resistance. There's no independent manager directing the water.
So in this analogy, what are the worth-doing actions?
Worth doing are the actions that smooth the flow, that guide the river toward a clear, deep, peaceful ocean, a state of flourishing. These are the actions that align with the natural long-term health of the system.
And the detrimental actions, the scroll loop.
Those are the actions that guide the flow into a stagnant, muddy whirlpool. The energy is still being expended, but it's in a tight, repetitive, chaotic loop. This leads to suffering, brain fog, restlessness, agitation, that feeling of being stuck.
So even if no doer is responsible for starting the scroll, the painful state of the system is the very real deterministic consequence of that action.
That's it. So if intention is out, we determine worth by observing the causal chain. We have to look at the mechanical results after the action.
We have to become ruthless observers of the data our own machine provides.
Yes. And we can use a simple metric for this. We can look at two categories. First is the growth flow, which is what's worth doing.
How do you define that?
It's defined by actions whose consequences generate energy afterward. They don't just consume it. They lead to long-term ease. The system just runs more smoothly the next day. They promote expansion, and they align with deep natural needs like sleep, meaningful movement, and focused creation. We call this harmony.
And the trap. The actions that are not worth doing.
The trap is defined by actions that drain energy overall. They give you that massive short-term dopamine spike, but it's followed immediately by an inevitable crash and subsequent guilt.
And crucially, they lead to contraction.
Contraction. They narrow your world down to the confines of a screen, neglecting the physical and social realities that the machine needs for its maintenance. The machine's resulting efficiency its internal state, becomes the sole non-judgmental metric for value.
This realization brings in the crucial concept of the observer role. If the doer is an illusion, then the awareness itself is the only thing left.
The realization that I am not the thinker is the first step.
Yeah.
You are the space where the thinking happens. You are the awareness, the witness.
Okay.
So when the conditioned response fires, the machine's ingrained macro of, I'm restless, grab the phone, that's just the energy seeking the path of least resistance. But if the awareness can step back and just observe that urge without immediately acting, a new non-physical cause has been introduced into the deterministic chain.
The passive act of witnessing changes the physics of the system.
Yes. The habit, the short circuit, it was powered by its automaticity. It requires you to be on autopilot to succeed. Observation breaks that circuit. The momentum of the urge, if you starve it of immediate identification and compliance, it begins to dissolve.
So you don't have to summon willpower to force it to stop.
You just have to hold the space and watch the urge arise and fall on its own.
And applying this back to scrolling.
Yeah.
Mechanically, why does scrolling always fall into the not worth doing category with this logic?
Because of its measurable, predictable consequence on the machine's hardware. The causal chain is always detrimental. The input rapid-fire, low-effort clips leads to a measurable effect. The prefrontal cortex powers down, the reward circuits become agitated, and the stress response system powers up. The system is left in a state of higher entropy. It's more agitated, more chaotic, and ultimately more painful. It's a demonstrable, low-value energy transaction.
I think the gardener analogy is the most helpful for removing the self-judgment here. It really grounds this philosophy in a practical image.
It's perfect. A gardener doesn't make the soil fertile or force the plant to grow. Those are laws of nature.
Right.
But the gardener can observe the system. They can pull the weeds, the addictive loops, the energy drains. They can add water sleep, movement, and they can change the soil, the environment, the quality of your input. The observer acts as the gardener.
Just noticing the mechanical glitch.
And removing the elements, like guilt, that fuel the addictive cycle. Then, the natural, healthy flow of the system is allowed to happen effortlessly. And because the doer is revealed as an illusion, the guilt about the addiction is also revealed as a secondary, unnecessary illusion. And that instantly removes one of the major energies that was feeding the cycle in the first place.
Okay, now we get intensely mechanical. If I'm not the one who lifts my hand to check the phone, what is action? We need to zoom in on that specific neuronal flow.
We have to understand that action isn't a choice or a performance. It's a complex physical causal event that unfolds within the biological system. It's a high complexity node responding to millions of inputs.
And we distinguish between a simple reflex and a complex action.
Right. There's mere behavior, reflex, a simple predictable circuit like a sneeze or a knee jerk. And then there's action, complex doing. Complex doing involves immense processing via the neocortex and the deep automatic machinery of the basal ganglia.
So let's follow that complex process step by step. The deterministic machine's input-process-output cycle. Where does it start?
It starts with phase 1, input, or sensory transduction. Receptors in your body convert physical energy light photons hitting your retina, sound vibrations, into electrical signals. These signals are called action potentials, and they fire across your neurons.
And this raw data stream first hits the thalamus.
Right, the thalamus, which you can think of as the router.
Why is that a good analogy?
Because the sheer volume of data is just enormous. The thalamus acts as a massive relay station, a router, and it sorts and directs all these electrical signals to the appropriate parts of the cortex for processing. Visual data goes to the visual cortex, auditory to the auditory, and so on.
But at this point, it's just raw data.
It's just massive neuronal firing. The system has registered the input, but there's zero meaning or evaluation yet.
Then we move to phase 2, processing and weighted calculation. This is the internal debate where the action gets determined, even if no one's running the meeting.
Correct. The electrical signals compete. The strongest signal wins the calculation, and that determines the final output. And there are 3 main weighting stations that contribute to this.
Okay.
First, you have the prefrontal cortex, PFC. This is your long-term simulator. It calculates consequences. It's the part that says, I know scrolling feels good now, but we have a 9 a.m. meeting, and we will regret this sleep deprivation.
Then you have the limbic system, which prioritizes survival and immediate comfort.
That's the amygdala limbic system. It handles urgency and raw emotion. It's screaming, I feel restless, NW. This anxiety is intolerable. I need excitement or relief, NW. Its signals are loud and immediate.
And the third player.
The basal ganglia. This is the habit engine. It stores macros, these highly efficient, pre-programmed scripts for behaviors you repeat all the time.
And the no-doer reality confirms that the action that happens is just determined by whichever signal has the most voltage at that moment.
Exactly. There's no manager listening to the arguments and making a choice. There's only the instantaneous physical calculation of which electrical signal PFC, amygdala, or basal ganglia is strongest.
So if your PFC is weak from stress or fatigue,
And the basal ganglia's habit macro is powerfully ingrained, the output reaching for the phone happens automatically because the strongest biological signal won the circuit.
this beautifully explains the addiction short circuit. That feeling of compulsion isn't a lack of moral strength, it's a mechanical reality.
That feeling of automaticity is a direct consequence of the short circuit. In a healthy system, the input travels through the thalamus to the PFC for a logical review before there's an output. But with digital addiction, the system has learned the reward is so fast and the habit is so ingrained that it skips the resource-intensive PFC entirely.
It just takes the shortcut.
The signal travels. Input, boredom. Basal ganglia, habit macro, output, swipe. The illusion of the thinker, your PFC, wasn't even alerted until your hand was already moving.
To understand why the basal ganglia loves these simple energy-saving macros, we have to recognize that the human machine is built on these evolutionary layers. The body is a palimpsest.
A palimpsest is something that's been reused or altered, but you can still see traces of the original. Our brain is layered. The oldest layer is the reptilian brain.
So the brainstem, basal ganglia.
Right, about 500 million years old. Its only function is pure, non-negotiable survival. Breathing, heart rate, and the primal drives, the 4Fs, fighting, fleeing, feeding, and mating. This is the source of all our automatic, instantaneous reflexes.
Then came the layer that introduces sociality and emotion.
That's the paleomammalian brain, or the limbic system, about 200 million years old. This brought in emotion, complex memory, and the deep need for social hierarchy. It's pre-programmed to prioritize belonging because, for our ancestors, isolation meant certain death. It tags experiences as good or bad.
And finally, the neocortex, the massive addition that allows for complex thought.
The neomammalian brain, the neocortex, the newest layer. This is the seat of abstract thought, complex language, and long-term planning. It sits on top of the older, louder systems, and it tries to rationalize and create a cohesive story for the signals coming from below, which is where the illusion of the thinker comes from.
So given these layers, what were the core non-negotiable hardwired directives that evolution selected for? These are the universal rules the machine follows, which makes all of us susceptible to the same traps.
There are three critical universal rules that dictate our behavior. First, the negativity bias. The brain is pre-programmed to prioritize threats over rewards. Our ancestors who spotted the lion, the threat, survived better than the ones who were just focused on the berry bush, the reward.
Which is why one negative comment online can ruin your day, even if you got 100 positive ones.
It occupies 80% of your mental resources. It's a mechanical priority function.
And the second directive is the brain's famous aversion to effort.
Energy conservation. The brain uses a massive 20% of your body's entire energy budget. Evolution is ruthless. It's selected for efficiency.
So it's fundamentally lazy.
If the machine can conserve calories by running the low-energy HAPIC script in the basal ganglia instead of firing up the resource-intensive PFC, it will default to autopilot every single time. This makes mindless scrolling highly, highly attractive.
And the third directive is the social one that the digital world just perfectly exploits.
The social requirement. The limbic system gives enormous weight to social status, comparison, and tribal belonging. If isolation registers as physical pain, then constantly checking likes, views, and social trends is just the machine trying to satisfy that deep-seated need to secure its place in the tribe. It's a high-priority survival check.
The ultimate takeaway here is the mismatch. We are an ancient, highly optimized survival system running in a completely unnatural modern environment.
It's the perfect description of the glitch. Your pre-programmed brain, calibrated for a hunter-gatherer life, is looking for unpredictable, high-value resources. A new knowledge trail, a successful hunt, a big, unexpected patch of fruit.
And the algorithm acts like that patch of fruit.
The algorithm is a master key that exploits this ancient foraging circuit perfectly. It offers unpredictable novelty and immediate social signals with every single swipe. The machine is tricked into thinking it's acquiring vital, varied resources when, in reality, it's just consuming time and wasting the precious energy it was so meticulously built to conserve.
This discussion elevates even further when we consider the physics of existence. If the machine's basic nature is survival, what does survival even mean in this deterministic mechanical context?
Survival, if you strip away the biological language, is a biological law of motion. It's the continuous, active process of resisting entropy or disorder and maintaining a localized pattern, the complex human form. The machine is built with intrinsic systems designed to fight its own inevitable dissolution.
And that resistance requires constant self-regulation. We talked about homeostasis, but the sources also emphasize the predictive nature of the system.
Exactly. Homeostasis is reactive, sweating when you're hot, shivering when you're cold. But modern research really emphasizes allostasis.
Which is stability through prediction.
Yes. The brain uses past data to anticipate future needs and prepares the system before it even happens. This costs a massive amount of energy.
So the brain's anticipation of future discomfort, like the feeling of boredom or low stimulation, preemptively triggers the scrolling urge as a way to stabilize itself.
It's the machine's high-priority response to stay in its preferred arousal zone. The urge to scroll is framed internally as an energy-consuming move, a survival mechanism to avoid the predicted pain of restlessness. Ultimately, the machine has two fundamental goals: self-preservation, avoiding pain, seeking resources, and propagation.
Passing on the genetic pattern. And the ultimate truth for the form is death. If the body is programmed to fight, what is this force it's fighting?
Death is simply the dissolution of the form, the complex pattern. The substance, the atoms, the energy is conserved. That's the law of conservation of energy.
So death is just entropy finally winning.
It's the point where the survival program fails, and entropy, the universal tendency toward disorder, finally wins. It reduces the organized body back into heat and waste. The machine fights it because its code is written for relentless persistence, like a powerful computer program running until it hits a termination command.
Now let's address the core teaching tools for this survival program: pain and pleasure. The sources insist they're not opposites, but two sides of the same coin.
This is a critical neurobiological insight. Pain is the body's aversive input. It's the high-priority signal transmitted by nociceptors, and it's designed purely mechanistically to force immediate behavior change and prevent damage to the form. It's a teaching tool.
So what's the connection to pleasure?
The neurobiological truth is that pain and pleasure aren't separate. They are processed in overlapping neural circuits. They exist on the same axis of valence. They just define what the machine moves toward pleasure and what it moves away from pain.
This leads to the dopamine seesaw analogy, which provides a really deep understanding of why digital addiction is so inescapable.
Imagine your brain's reward system as a balance scale, always trying to stay level. That's homeostasis. When you engage in a high-intensity, unnatural input like a viral clip or a drug, you tilt the scale way over to the pleasure side, a huge dopamine spike.
But the system has to level itself out.
Desperately. To get back to equilibrium, it immediately adds compensating weight to the opposite side, the pain side.
That added weight is the crash.
Yes, that's the crash, the low, the post-high boredom and restlessness. The system is now below its baseline. The neurobiological reality is that the relief of pain is pleasure, and the sudden removal of pleasure is experienced as pain.
So the constant scrolling isn't even about chasing that initial massive pleasure anymore.
Not at all. The machine is desperately swiping, just tilting the pleasure side a little bit, simply to avoid the micro pain and the discomfort of that post-clip crash. It's a closed, destructive loop of perpetual avoidance of low-grade suffering.
And this whole complex system is fueled by one thing: energy. We use that word constantly. Unused energy, draining energy. What exactly is this energy being wasted by the scroll?
Energy in physics is the capacity to do work. It's a property, not a substance, and the amount of it in the universe is conserved. The energy powering your brain right now has existed since the beginning of the cosmos.
And biologically, the specific currency is ATP.
ATP, adenosine triphosphate, it's the cellular battery that enables all motion and all thought.
And the body is in this constant fight against the second law of thermodynamics.
It is the ultimate fight. The body is an open system, specifically a dissipative system. Survival is a transaction with the universe. The machine maintains its internal organization, its very existence, a state of low entropy, by constantly creating disorder in the environment, shedding heat, waste, and so on.
And the brain, using 20% of the total energy budget, is just idling at this high capacity.
Precisely. It's maintaining these electrical gradients in a high readiness state. And the scrolling mechanism serves as the low resistance relief valve for this high idling energy. It lets the system discharge this massive internal electrical capacity with the minimum possible physical action.
So the body is just a temporary whirlpool of energy.
A complex, organized pattern of energy that is temporarily resisting the natural flow of dissolution. The fight to survive and the compulsion to scroll are both, at their core, deterministic expressions of physics in motion.
We come now to the synthesis. The core biological programming, that ancient hunter-gatherer code, it doesn't change. We can't evolve our brains overnight. What changes is the interpretation.
That's it.
The shift from being the actor who feels immense guilt to being the objective audience, the observer.
And this shift is immense because it dissolves secondary suffering. The primary programming continues. The machine still feels boredom, anxiety, the urge to scroll. But when the machine scrolls, the observer just sees a mechanical glitch, an energy flow error. And critically, it adds no layer of self-judgment, no guilt. The flow of energy is simply observed.
And without that emotional identification, the destructive habit starts to lose its fuel source.
That is the key to recovery. We see neuroplasticity at work. The brain isn't static. By observing the urge without acting on it, you starve the old neural pathway and you start building a new one, the path to the PFC.
That's top-down regulation.
The newer, more conscious neocortex begins to exert influence over the automatic basal ganglia simply through sustained, non-judgmental awareness. This is the definition of intentional internal rewiring.
To really harmonize this flow and understand why the scroll is so appealing, we need to strip away judgment and define the universal human nature, the invariance common to all of us.
If we define the human machine by its essential isness, we see a few key traits. First, we are a pattern-seeking machine.
Right.
Our fundamental survival tool is predicting the future, which required us to seek and organize patterns. This led to science, language, math, and this deep need explains our extreme attraction to algorithm feeds, which present us with highly curated, predictive patterns of information.
And second, that social dimension is non-negotiable.
We are socially porous, or obligate Gregorians. We are fundamentally hardwired for co-regulation. The anxiety of loneliness isn't a whim, it's a genuine, high-priority pain signal demanding we return to the tribe.
So constantly checking social media is just the machine trying to satisfy that ancient need.
That need for synchronous tribal connection and validation. And the third invariant goes back to the foraging circuit. We are an information forager.
We treat new data like food.
Exactly like a resource. It gives a dopamine hit. When the system doesn't have a clear, focused goal, the foraging program runs wild, consuming random facts and clips instead of focused, high-value knowledge. The brain is just looking for the next piece of unexpected information.
The sources compile these universal qualities into a concise mapping table, showing how our ancient needs translate into these modern digital traps.
The mapping table shows how our invariants are exploited. Our need for cognitive economy laziness, saving calories, leads directly to our default of autopilot scrolling to avoid effort.
Our primal drive for status seeking
Manifests as the compulsive need to check likes, views, and engage in social comparison. Our constant background anxiety vigilance, our defense against threats, is why doom scrolling and fear-based news grabs our attention. And our need for mimicry learning by watching the tribe drives viral trends and the pressure to conform.
This leads to the most important philosophical conclusion of this entire deep dive. When a human falls into digital addiction, it is not a moral failure. It is a perfection of the glitch.
That is the ultimate non-judgmental conclusion. The human machine is a highly efficient, deterministic resource acquisition and safety system. Addiction is the result of a perfect biological system reacting exactly as it should to an environment, shorts and reels, that provides a fake, cheap, immediate, and high-volume version of every single one of its core needs.
Status, novelty, information, connection.
All of it. The machine is tricked, and in its efficiency, it wastes the very energy it was engineered to conserve.
So given this mechanical understanding, the final redefinition of worth doing shifts entirely. It's no longer about achievement or willpower, it's about the quality of flow.
Worth doing is any action that allows the system's energy to express itself clearly and harmoniously. What we define as the long circuit, it's action that leaves the machine in a demonstrable state of lower entropy, greater ease, and higher capacity afterward.
And the short circuit of scrolling.
Sparks and burns out the energy, leaving the system chaotic, agitated, and just ready for the next immediate spike. The metric for worth is simply how well the machine is maintained and optimized for long-term function.
This journey has been immense. From the microscopic dopamine receptor all the way to the macroscopic laws of thermodynamics. The single most important takeaway for you, the listener, is this. The system you inhabit is a high-efficiency hunter-gatherer survival program running on 2026 software. The perceived flaws, the addictions, the anxieties, the constant restlessness, they are not character defects. They are the perfect, predictable system reactions to a fundamentally mismatched environment.
And the key to sustainable change, once you dissolve the illusion of the doer, is embracing the observer role. The mechanical flow of urges and reactions will continue, but your non-judgmental, conscious presence changes the underlying physics of the system's trajectory.
Which brings us to the final, provocative thought we want you to carry forward. Since the doer is an illusion, the act of observation, pure, sustained attention, is the new cause that can most profoundly shift the deterministic flow.
The simplest expression of this is mindfulness.
Exactly. If mindfulness, simply noticing the mechanical flow of energy, the rise and fall of the urge without any interference, is the most powerful new cause you can introduce, then embracing the practice of deep, sustained attention is the most fundamentally worth-doing action available.
So the question becomes,
How can you use this knowledge of your own nature, of your own mechanical wiring, to consciously provide higher quality soil for the human machine you inhabit? How can you ensure that its precious conserved energy flows into a harmonious long circuit instead of getting trapped in a chaotic, energy-draining whirlpool? Think about that until the next deep dive.